Hello and welcome to Chubby Munchkin Studio. Today we're going to make Porco Rosso's Secret Cave. As always, I start with styrofoams. To enforce all pieces together, I use toothpicks and foam glue. To create the cave, I start by digging in the back wall. Now we've completed the base. I use Woodland Scenics rock molds for the cave surface. I mix 1 part water, 2 parts plaster, and a couple squeeze of school glue. I also added a couple drops of black and silver acrylic paint, but not mix it fully to achieve random pattern on the rocks. After demolding the rocks, I kept all the crumbs for later use. I start by covering the base with a layer of plaster. The plaster was mixed the same ratio as the rock. To add on the rocks, I first smear some plaster on the rock. Then fill in the cracks with some more plaster to create a better bonding. After the plaster fully dried, I start brushing on some black wash. To learn how to make black wash, you can check out my other videos in the link in the description below. Next step, I mix some white paint with yellow ochre paint. And then dry brush them on the rock. Normally I would suggest a light layer of dry brush, but the rock in the Porco Rosso is yellowish, so I wasn't really conservative with the dry brush. To paint the bottom of the ocean, these are always my go-to colors. I start with gray-brownish color and proceed to light teal color. Then gradually adding more and more blue. Oh. That moment I realized I painted the color wrong direction, but with my OCD I decided to finish the paint anyway. Next step, I'm using Mad Mod Podge as adhesive for the sand. I use a small strainer to filter out small sand particles for the beach, so it will look less rocky and smoother. To secure the sand, I spray some homemade Mod Podge spray adhesive. I then glued on more small rocks at random places. Brush off the excessive sand. I decided to add some black wash to the ready-to-use scenic trees to tune down some brightness. I also sanded the barks and branches to make the tree trunk rougher and look more natural. Don't throw away the loose leaves, because these can be useful for later. I also kept some homemade spray adhesive in a small drop bottle, so I can reach into cracks or small locations. I'm reusing the loose leaves as vegetation that grow on the cliffs and cracks. Now we've completed the base. Next step. Next step, we're going to create the wall for the little house near the back of the cave. I didn't dig in too deep, so I can easily pop off the top layer to create a 3D dimension of a door. Just like this. To deal with the wall surface, I first sand it down, then use metal brush to create more grooves. I use an old white acrylic paint, scrape off the dry part and use it to paint the wall. For the door, I use water-based wood stain, and I use gloss black acrylic paint for the window. I added some black wash to age the wall. Then I use Folk Art moss effect to add some moss. To create the roof, I tape some toothpicks on the table. Carefully lay a sheet of aluminum foil on the toothpick to press down and create the roof effect. To add some rust on the roof, I use Folk Art rust effect. I rip off a small sponge to dry brush on some dark brown and yellow ochre. To make the pier, I use thin flat wood sticks and I choose Titebond Premium Wood Glue. I use metal brush to give it more texture. Then I brush on some black wash, followed by water-based wood stain. I added a moss effect near the edges and in the wood cracks. Next step, I 3D printed the accessories. All the files can be found on Thingiverse. After they are done printing, time to put them together. I know I should have printed them in red, but I don't have any red filament, so we will use airbrush instead.
飛ばねえ豚ただの豚だ。
I added some moss effect to the bottom of the barrel, because that part is supposed to submerge in the ocean. I only found a standard vintage phone 3D file, so in order to make it look more like the movie, I'm adding a wood box at the bottom of the vintage phone. I decided to add some wood crates, a fuse box, some gas tanks, and a telephone pole to make the scene look more realistic. I like my fuse box to be rusty. I'm painting army green on the gas tank. Behind the scene, I made a tiny wooden table, but it turned out to be too big to fit in the cave, so I decided to print a smaller table. Now let's put everything together. I embedded the barrels in the bottom of the ocean on an angle. I'm making a tiny wooden stand for the fuse box. To make it look more realistic, I use thin PLA cable to connect the telephone pole to the phone box and the little house. I also use the same cable to connect the fuse box and the tent. I added some green grass in front of the house and in between the cracks. I found some small branches in the backyard. I'm going to sand them down and use them as driftwood. I decided to add some moss effect on the rock where it's supposed to meet the ocean. Instead of paint over my mistakes, I decided to add a layer of ocean texture first. I brush on a layer of gloss Mod Podge. Then I lay a thin layer of toilet paper on top of the Mod Podge. I spray the Mod Podge spray to make the toilet paper wet. Then I use a paintbrush to slowly push up the toilet paper into ocean wave texture. I added 2 to 3 layers of toilet paper. After it dries, I'm painting it with the same color scheme, except this time I use glow-in-the-dark acrylic paint to replace the white paint, so it can glow in the dark at night. To create a sealed environment before I pour resin, I cut out a strip of PLA plastic sheet and then use glue gun to hot glue the edge. I'm using 2-part epoxy for the ocean. I added only tiny bit of blue coloring because any more will make the ocean cloudy. I use a lighter to remove the bubbles. Let's not forget about his airplane. I'm removing the sharp edges by using an X-Acto knife. I'm repainting some black wash on the part that got ripped off by the hot glue. Next part, I'm brushing on another layer of gloss Mod Podge. I use airbrush to blow on the Mod Podge just like how wind blows on the water surface. To create the sea foam effect, I use Woodland Cynics Snowflake. I mix the snowflake with gloss Mod Podge. Then, be creative with the wave. Before the foam fully dried, I scoped the foam with a toothpick to make it look more realistic.